For plant-based creamy sauces, which is better, cashews or
Silken tofu.
When we say silken tofu, we mean a very specific brand of silken tofu.
Mori Nu.
Exactly. I have yet to see another one that is the same. There was somebody asked the other day about it, and supposedly it's very similar, but like when we get our Publix brand, not the same at all. But anyway, a lot of people ask, can I substitute cashews for Mori Nu or Mori Nu for cashews? And well, we've kind of been doing that in most of our recipes. I will be honest. If I had my preference, all things being equal, I would prefer to use cashews for most things. I feel the extra little bit of flavor and the neutrality that it brings, it's just a little bit better for me. But that said, wait till you see the differences and you'll understand why we almost don't use cashews much at all anymore.
So, as usual for our listicles, we have a bunch of different criteria that we're basing these two on. We're going to do calorie count, we're going to do protein amount, we're going to do net carbs, fat, and fiber. And that way you have an idea of how each play out against each other. In addition, Brian has figured out their cost as well.
Now, something important is we need to compare apples to apples. And this big bag of cashews versus one package of tofu is not the same thing at all. So we went looking around and found various ideas on how much cashews to use instead of Mori Nu or how much Mori Nu to use instead of cashews. And here's what standard we decided to go on. When I go to make a sauce, I either use a whole block of tofu or a cup of cashews. That's the standard. So we are comparing 1 cup of cashews to 1 block, which this is the 10.8. They actually make a 12 or 12.4. But these are the newer versions, I think. So it's comparing these two, a cup of cashews to the block of Mori Nu.
Starting off, we're going to start with the Mori Nu Silken Tofu Extra Firm. This is, as Brian said, a 10.8 ounce package. It has 168.4 calories, 22.7 grams of protein, 5.8 grams net carbs, 5.8 grams fat, and 0.3 grams of fiber. It's roughly, prices...
If you buy it on Amazon.
Sure, prices vary, so.
I went off of Amazon prices just because that's the most universal. A package of 12 of these was $33.48, which works out to $2.79 per package. Now, for us, if I make a sauce using that, that's probably 2 meals for the two of us. So that is super cheap. And both of these will actually make 2 meals worth of sauces for us when we use them. But still, that's hard to beat. I mean, look at 168 calories and only 5.8 grams of fat. That's awesome for me. That actually has a marginal, if anything, amount of fiber. 0.3 grams. I don't even worry about that.
Let's talk about cashews now.
Yeah, this is disturbing for me because I want to like the cashews better, but I can't after knowing this. 1 cup of cashews. This is raw, unsoaked, unprocessed cashews, just like they come in this bag, the way you would use them in your Vitamix or whatever to make a cream sauce that we've actually done on the show. 1 cup is 693 calories versus 168 calories for the Mori Nu. That is almost 4 times as much. Actually, I think it is 4 times as much. That's insane. Just absolutely insane. Then we have protein, 22.7 grams of protein. That is identical.
Yeah.
To the decimal point,
that was
identical
shocking.
in protein. I was less surprised by that though, because I know that the nuts are going to have a lot of protein. And,
I knew they were going to be roughly the same, but I didn't think it was to the point.
Net carbs, 41.7 net carbs versus Mori Nu at 5.8. Now, I don't really count carbs. I don't worry about carbs as much. I watch calories and fat. That's really the two things, and fiber, actually. We watch those. Speaking of fiber, I'm going to do fiber before I do fat, just because I have to. 5.3 grams of fiber versus 0.3 grams of fiber. So that is possibly the only thing that the cashews have over the Mori Nu. But let me just say, 5 grams of fiber is really not that hard to make up. So you can get that 5 grams from nearly any other source. I mean, just anything else you want to add, you can get that 5 grams of fiber back. Here's the biggie. Hope you're sitting down.
We'll give you a moment.
1 cup of cashews has 50.5 grams of fat, as opposed to 5.8 grams in the Mori Nu. That number right there, that is 2 days worth of fat for me from just 1 cup of cashews. So I know people that will take handfuls of cashews and nuts and just eat them all day long. You are consuming an enormous amount of fat. If you are at all trying to lose weight, that is hampering your efforts. I will tell you right now, some amount of nuts is good for you. Some amount of fats are good for you. But nobody needs to be eating handfuls of cashews. It's just, you don't. Just that, I was blown away by that number. I knew it was high, but I didn't realize it was quite that high.
So let's get to the good news.
But wait, there's more. Because I said each serving, like each, we use a cup of this, makes 2 meals. That means 4 servings. So that's still 12.5 grams of fat just from a sauce. That's not anything else I added to my food that day. That's just an enormous amount. Anyway, also, 2.2 pounds. I think that's what this is. This is 2.5, but I looked it up, and a brand that we get pretty often is 2.2 pounds for $17.85. That comes out to $2.56 per cup versus the Mori Nu at $2.79. So we're literally talking 23 cents difference. Which, break that down for serving, it's 6 cents per serving different. I wouldn't even consider that. That's not even... When you compare the rest of those numbers, 6 cents a certain, nope, don't even care.
So part of what spurred this comparison was comments from you and saying, can I just switch out? And yes, in theory you can, but this is the cost of it, if you will. And that got us to think further because we found many people were reacting confused by this concept that nuts are high fat.
Yep.
And we're like, why does nobody know this? I mean, we know this. Why does nobody else know this? And so we went and started searching what is a good low-fat topping or addition or sauce to rice.
Or bread.
To pasta, whatever.
Now, keep in mind, we searched for low-fat toppings, low-fat options, low-fat condiments.
And the things that came up on the list time and time again, near the top of the list, may I add, were avocados and nuts.
Nut butters.
Nut butters.
Not even nuts, nut butters.
So we're like, okay, let's continue with this compromise, this comparison, if you will.
Now, I want to go on record as saying the first thing that we're going to talk about, avocados, they are totally healthy. There's nothing wrong with them. You just want to know what you're getting when you do it, okay? So avocados, what do they got, Derica?
They have 227 calories per avocado.
One of the small black avocados. That's a lot of calories, first.
2.7 grams of protein, 2.4 grams of net carbs, and I'll do the switcheroo like Bri did, 9.2 grams of fiber.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That helps offset some of the next number.
But 21 grams of fat.
Right. So one avocado has about half the fat of a cup of cashews.
Yeah.
But it does have double the fiber. We'll give it that. Again, fiber to me is cheap. I can get fiber through a lot of things. I don't need to eat fat to get fiber. That's kind of a key point here is you do not have to get your fiber from eating things that have fat.
So if you're obsessed with avocado toast, and honestly, I don't blame you, maybe not use the entire avocado, but a half or maybe even better, a fourth of that avocado.
Yeah, when I do something with avocado for myself, I only use like a fourth of an avocado. That way I'm getting about 5 grams. That's a manageable amount for me. Because keep in mind, being diabetic, I'm trying to reduce my fat so that I don't have to worry about carbs as much and I can keep my glucose levels under control. So I keep to under 30 grams a day. That comes from Dr. Barnard, Dr. Greger, Dr. McDougall. There's all these different doctors that have suggested this. The Mastering Diabetes program, they have all referenced that number, 25 to 30 grams of fat per day or less. So most days I think I'm around 15 to 20.
So this leads us to nut butters, and we picked our favorite, which is peanut butter, 2 tablespoons.
Yeah, now keep in mind, the serving size is 2 tablespoons. I don't know about you, but I could put 2 tablespoons in my mouth at one time. I'm serious. That's just not a lot of peanut butter. If I make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, if I use 2 tablespoons, I covered 1/4 of the bread. I mean, it's just not that much. So I'm just giving you a primer here. That is 180 calories, which doesn't sound so bad, but if I need to use 4 times that to cover the bread, that's a lot of calories. 8 grams of protein. That's actually pretty respectable. You got to give it there. And nut butters are actually packed with protein. That's one of the reasons why people eat them. 7 net carbs. So if you're watching your carbs, that's good. But you shouldn't be watching carbs on a plant-based diet. There's really just very little reason to, other than excessive calories. That's the only reason to worry about carbs. And I'm going to swap around again. 3 grams of fiber. Again, I can make up 3 grams of fiber, in a couple of bites of an orange or an apple. I'm not even worried about that. That's not a big deal. But here's the big one. 15 grams of fat. That is 60% of my fat intake for the day from something I can put in my mouth at the same time. I know that sounds horrible, but you know what I mean. 2 tablespoons is 15 grams of fat. By the time I made my sandwich, it would be 60 grams of fat. The way I would make a peanut butter and jelly. No, I make a hefty peanut butter. I'll admit it. It's kind of it's a big boy,
Yeah.
But I use PB Fit now. Way better. 2 tablespoons is like 2 grams of fat, I think. So way different.
And so hopefully your takeaway from this is that you can eat all these things. There's nothing wrong with any of them. Just be aware of what you're actually consuming and how much of each macronutrient, if you're trying to reduce fat or sodium, we didn't even get into sodium into this list, or other elements that you're trying to either include more of or reduce in your diet.
Right. Something I just want to say on this is, it was not unheard of for me to take a bag of those pretzel crisps and half a cup to a cup of cashews and make my dill sauce that I turn into what I call crack sauce, but it's a Southwestern spicy, basically ranch dressing. And I would dip the chips in it and I could eat almost that whole thing.
Yeah.
If I knew that's what I was doing, I never would have done that because that's insane. I was adding hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of calories as well as dozens of grams of fat to my diet every single day. And this is when I was still trying to beat diabetes. So yeah, knowing the difference, I could eat almost the whole thing of this with some pretzel crisps and still be okay for fat for the day.
Now, I can hear some of you screaming at the monitor right now, or whatever device you're watching us on, saying, what about your omega-3s? Well, that's a good question, and that'll be something we'll cover in another video.
So, hopefully you got something from this, and as always, guys, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on The Bistro.